So I decided to go back to the original Space Marines and a game from 2023. This game, uh, along with like a handful of other games, was up for grabs for my game of the year last year. I'm talking about Warhammer 40K Boltgun, a game in the Warhammer franchise. What is Warhammer? I hear you asking me. Well, Warhammer is a tabletop war game where a bunch of nerds collect little figurines and paint them, and they have all out wars. I've actually been kind of interested in Warhammer recently. I don't know if I'm gonna get into that stuff in terms of the physical side of it, but in terms of the video games, I have been interested. I've also been playing another Warhammer game called Chaos Bane, which is basically Diablo 3. But today we're talking about Warhammer 40K Boltgun, which is probably my favorite game that I've played from the Warhammer franchise so far, and also almost made it to my Game of the Year awards pick. If Alan Wake 2 didn't exist, or Pikmin 4, this probably would have made it. Warhammer 40K Boltgun is a first-person shooter within the Warhammer franchise, and it's basically like if a 90s company like id or 3D Realms made a Warhammer first-person shooter. So it's very similar to like Doom or Quake or Duke Nukem 3D, but within that Warhammer universe. So you play as a big old Space Marine in your big chunky armor. I actually like the way the game feels because when they're like big dudes. So whenever your character actually moves around, you can actually feel like his stomps and like the vibration of the controller, which is kind of cool. And it is a classic first-person shooter setup. You and a team of Marines were sent down to a planet to investigate some chaos cult. Well, guess what? The ship crashed. All the other Marines died except for you. So it's the classic one-man army trope in these classic first-person shooter games where you are just trying to survive and kill all the enemies. There are 3 chapters which are set up kind of like episodes in a classic shooter, whereas in Doom, like between episodes, your weapons would reset. So that's kind of how this game works too. You played through the missions in chapter 1, and then when you get to chapter 2, you're back to just your first gun. You do get some cool guns in this game. You start out with the bolt gun, which is what the game's named after, which is kind of like a little pistol machine gun hybrid thing. You get a shotgun, you get like a laser gun, you get a chain gun, and then you get different attachments for those guns, different types of ammo, and fun stuff to play with. This game is really cool aesthetically. I think it takes a low poly approach. It really tries to look like one of those older shooters. But it doesn't have the limitations of an older shooter though, so they're still able to make some really beautiful looking vistas, and like there's some areas where like I'm going through these castles and stuff and I can look up and they look really huge and like the scaling looks really cool. So they're able to kind of combine the cool aesthetic of an old shooter with a newer game. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term, but this falls within the genre of boomer shooter, which is a recent genre where game devs basically make a first-person shooter in the style of the 90s shooters. Some other ones I've played recently that I've really enjoyed were Dusk and Ion Fury. It's been really fun because I these are the kind of FPS games that I really like are these old school FPS games. So it's been really cool to see game developers take that older style of first person shooter and incorporate it into newer games. This is probably, like I said, my favorite Warhammer game that I've played so far. I have played a few other ones, including Chaos Bane and Space Marine, which I actually played back in the day on 360. And I'm interested in getting into some of the other Warhammer games. I've bought some and kind of fiddled around. Some of them are RTS games on console, Spencer. Cringe. But Boltgun just blew me away, and I really like this game. I think even if you have no interest in Warhammer, but you like a good first-person shooter, this game has a lot to offer. It's pretty fucking good.
Looks like have you heard of this game BPM, Bullets Per Minute?
Yeah, that's actually a game by Platonic Friends or whatever. They're publishing it. Yeah.
Similar like visual style. It kind of looks like there's another like 3D platformer they did. I think I gave you my
Demon Surf.
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, Demon Surf.
Yeah. Cool looking game. When I looked this up, the first thing that was coming up was the 40K and all the figures. I was like, what the hell am I looking at?
Yeah.
But is this...
Sorry, go ahead.
Is this like a campaign-focused game?
Yeah, it's all campaign. You play through 3 chapters, and they're pretty meaty, honestly. Like each chapter, it took me about 3 hours to get through the first chapter. So, and that's with deaths though, because where this is an older shooter, it is difficult. Like there are areas where like you'll get to, because most of the levels you just kind of stomp your way through the different stages. Get keys, kill enemies, get through doors, and finish stages. But there's some areas where they lock you in, and you can't leave until you clear out all the enemies in the area, and those areas are very difficult. They're like almost like arena like, and I find myself dying on some of those parts because the enemies are not afraid to just gang up on you. So it's very much one of the classic shooters where if you're not moving at all times, you are dead.
Yeah, I suck at games like that, like the original Doom. I just get crushed. But I don't know. I do worry sometimes. Like sometimes it's a lot of my eyes, like to take in.
Mm.
Did you feel that like when playing, or were you able to manage it?
No,
Okay.
not this one. No, I thought it was good, and in fact, like I said, I think the game is just looks stunning for its like the visual style and stuff. But no, I never felt that overwhelmed. I think there is the classic shooter problem of sometimes where there is so many enemies. Sometimes I would be getting shot by something and I couldn't tell where it was coming from, and I have to kind of like figure
Okay.
that out. But other than that, like that's a problem with the genre in general. you know sometimes it feels a little unfair, but no, and I thought it was done really well here.
It reminds me a lot of like the one that I played a lot was Hexen. That was one I was really big at. But what I'm finding so interesting looking at these graphics is I think like a lot of the pieces are the same almost of like low res like backgrounds but I think what makes it look so distinct is just the scale, like you were saying, is just like because like in a Hexen and all those like Doom and Quake and I'm thinking like Wolfenstein, they were all like enclosed and they were all just like tight corridors. So you could never see in the distance because they could never render that. But if you were like unchained that small, well, large, but hurdle, you get these huge vistas that from a distance the low poly doesn't really matter, and they just look like almost real and really beautiful, especially like when you contrast it with the enemies that are close that look like flat in 2D. It's really quite striking. It's interesting to look at.
It's a really cool. Like I said, they kept that aesthetic, but without any of the limitations, which I thought was interesting.
Well, what's interesting too is that the frame rate between the animations are different than the frame rate of the game.
Yeah,
which is jarring, but it's like its own little style where the characters move almost like what is that? What maybe like 10 FPS, maybe less.
Yeah, it's low.
But the game is like running at 60.
Yeah, the game feels smooth to play, but yeah, and like you have like a chainsaw sword as like a melee weapon you can use at any times, and like when you use that, it's like 2 frames. It's like you're charging it up, and then like it's like automatically in the enemy. Like it's like there's no animation between that,
Right.
But it's still very satisfying to use though, and I'm like, how did they do this? Like it's really cool. And yeah, and like I love any of the animations with your character too, because he also follows those rules, but you only it's first person, so you only really see your hands. But you're at any time while you're playing, as I put it on Xbox, when you push the Y button, you'll taunt. So you can like kill an enemy, and then he'll taunt, and like he'll stick his hand out and like point at him or something, and it'll be like, "You withstand nothing against the Empire." Then he'll go back to like slaying enemies or something. I'm like, this game's fucking badass.
Yeah.
Is it only the bolt gun? Is that the one weapon you use?
No, you get 4. The bolt gun's the one you start with in each chapter. But then you get a shotgun, a laser gun, and then like a chain gun, and you can switch between them.
Okay.
And then they get enhancements themselves, so they kind of like act as guns you can kind of build upon. You can find secrets within the levels or different types of ammo. So, but they just sort of act as a basis.
Okay.
But the Boltgun's the one you keep, and that's the game's named after. I'm only just now learning about a lot of this Warhammer stuff. I know it's bigger in the UK, so please forgive me, UK listeners. We don't have game workshops stuff over here. It's really like I hardly see Warhammer stuff over here. So I'm just now learning about a lot of the lore and stuff, which is actually kind of interesting. Again, I don't think I would ever. I might buy a couple of the little figures to like paint and put on a shelf, but I would never buy a bunch of them because I don't know any Warhammer people who would actually play it. So
When I was in 8th grade, I had a friend who told me he was a big Warhammer guy. And remember that the internet wasn't really a thing yet.
yeah, so who is he playing it with?
Well, like I didn't know.
His mom.
I couldn't really. Yeah, probably because he was a single mom family.
W mom.
But he told me like I'm really into Warhammer. I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's like a futuristic. It's like orcs, but in the future, and it's like there's all these like monsters you can ride and do all this stuff." And to me, it sounded like the coolest fucking video game I've ever heard of. And then I finally went to his house and he showed me, and it was like a toy on a little map. And I just remember being so angry. Like my fingers are like, my hand was shaking. Like, you brought me all the way over here to look at this fucking toy. And I was outraged by it.
That's why the games have like interested me. Okay, by the way, there's like two Warhammer things. There's Warhammer, and then there's Warhammer 40k. 40k is like the futuristic one, and then regular Warhammer is like looks like basically like a Lord of the Rings Tolkien-esque type thing. And that's the other game I've been playing. Chaos Bane is just Warhammer. It's more fantasy based. But yeah, that's the difference between them. But they're both very interesting.
Right.
And that's why I've been like interested in playing some of these games now, because like the world and characters and like aesthetic are really cool for the Warhammer stuff, and it feels like there's untapped potential for gaming here. I remember back on 360, the only Warhammer I ever heard of was when I don't know if you guys remember, that first Space Marine game came out. It was not really a big deal, but it got publication. Like I remember seeing like a Game Informer cover had the Space Marine stuff, and I remember seeing the guy in the big bulky Space Marine suit being like, that looks sick, you know. And I played the game, but like other than that, I didn't know shit about Warhammer. I didn't, for all I knew, that was it, you know, that was just the game. But yeah, now it seems like there's been a lot more Warhammer stuff releasing here, and we get a lot of them on consoles and PC, and I'm like interested in diving into that.
Like I played the hell out of Vermintide. That
Okay.
was like a multiplayer, almost like Left 4 Dead meets Warhammer. It was
Okay.
fun. It was good. RPG elements added to it. It was nice. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever played anything that really was like, oh man, I got to get into Warhammer now. It's more just been like, I like it from a distance. It's
Yeah, well, that's sort of where I am now. Like, I'm gonna play some of the video games, and I might read about like the world, you know. But in terms of like actually buying the Games Workshop's like the little figurines and stuff, like if I ever did, I would probably just buy one that I liked the characters of, just to like put them on a shelf, you know, to be like, oh, here's my little Space Marine guys. You know, like
Yeah, dude, I get that. My Starlink ships are still just floating around on the shelf. Like, why are you here?
yeah, I have a Starlink ships on the shelf too. But you know, it's like it's weird. It's weird that like Warhammer hasn't become a thing here, really, like a franchise in terms of like, you know, like we get video games, but in terms of like a movie or something or a show, you know, I feel like there's some untapped potential here for something. But, yeah, I thought that would be a thing that would have happened by now. So
sure they
I don't
did
know.
too.
Maybe, I mean, they clearly aren't that protective because all these companies make video games based on it, but I was like, maybe Games Workshop are just protective of the IP. I don't know. But,
We're more of a
Boltgun,
Peace
though.
Hammer fan base out here.
yeah, Peace Hammer. Peace, homie. Warhammer 40k Boltgun, like I said, almost made it to my game of the year last year. It was really hard to choose because I had so many games, including Pikmin 4, Diablo 4. But Alan Wake 2 took the cake, so I had to pick that. But this game was in the running, and it's a game that I've continued to play because it's super fucking good.
There you go. Glowing endorsement.
Yeah. Take that.
That flood.
Yeah. Oh, Halo month. Hope you guys are ready.
This is it. We started.
Still waiting for it.
We don't have a we should really decide when the live episodes are going to happen so we can announce that on the Game Talk or something, because we haven't done that. Because I was going to tell them keep an eye out for the live episode this month, but we don't know what day.
Yeah, it'll happen on a Saturday in April. Stay tuned. We'll post to the Discord about it where you can find out more, and also
there
on
you go.
Community channel page.
We'll be back to talk about more Halo games in the live episode.
Yeah, in case you really like this one, you're like, hey, I want more Halo game talk. Well, don't go anywhere. Subscribe.
Hey y'all, don't forget to subscribe to them button mappers.